Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Gaming Quitte, the most delicious Quitte of them all, and today we're going to take a look at units you could possibly use in the Asura fight in the Sinister Dominion series in Dragalia Lost. We don't know the mechanics at this point, so not everyone might be optimal in the end, but this is more to just give some ideas since Curse of Nihility will surely also be a thing in the Asura fight. I'm also going to assume that Asura can be poisoned and inflicted with Shadow Blight at least a few times, so we'll also take Punisher units into account. Another small thing I need to get out of the way before we begin. We're going to talk about the light version of Asura. In Master, she will turn her element into wind, which means you'll need flame units to fight her. I already talked about flame units you can use in the Sinister Dominion series in my child above video, which is linked in the description and in the top right corner. I will also talk about some small changes to Curse of Nihility that affect some flame units after the Asura talk in this video, so stay tuned. If you, by the way, end up enjoying this video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content from yours truly. And now let's finally start with sword units. It should come as no surprise that the Dragonblood hero Alberius will surely be viable in the fight against Asura. You sadly cannot use Wyrmprints that give you Dragon Claws and stuff like that, since those buffs get nullified by Curse of Nihility, but otherwise he's a strong unit that can deal a lot of damage. You could, in theory, try to dodge the Curse of Nihility with his skills, because you turn into a dragon for a short amount of time, but I wouldn't count on doing that in the end. The next unit, Alex, will probably see some kind of return, partly thanks to her mana spiral. With that, she can provide strength amps. She's also extremely good at poisoning the enemy and reducing its defense while using these afflictions to deal even more damage. If this spell is needed, she can also help with that, as well as Alberius, by the way. Everyone has access to Audric nowadays, since you can get him for free in the event compendium. He's probably not going to be extremely good, but I feel like he could be a viable unit, because he can be in dragon form quite a lot. And if you are going to use 3-star units, I guess Rodrigo could be possible, because he can inflict poison quite a lot, but this might cap poison too fast, so maybe not. When it comes to blades, well, we do have a few options, but if they are optimal, depending on how much you move around, you could probably, for example, bring Linnea, because if built correctly, she can deal quite a lot of damage and she's also extremely fun to use and looks really cool. She also helps destroy the overdrive bar, which is always a good thing. Another unit you could bring is Ieyasu to inflict bleed and do some nice damage on poisoned foes, but his blade formation effect gets nullified, except for the HP recovery part of it. If for some reason you want to bring Aldred, well, I guess you can, but I'm not sure if he's going to be good. His Dragon Drive mechanics work, but the problem is that his loathsome power effect gets nullified, which makes him way stronger. Without it, he hits like a wet noodle. Someone who will absolutely not work is Durant, and it absolutely hurts me to say that. In the dagger weapon type, I would say you can actually bring a lot of them to the fight, in theory at least. With Joker, you have a Dispel on command and he is just a strong unit in general. The only thing he loses is his third ability, where he gains energy by increasing his combo counter, but that shouldn't hurt him too much. With Nevin, well, I would love to say he could be viable, but his buff field doesn't work and nobody will bring buff fields to the fight, which makes his released sigil second skill kinda useless. His sigil buffs and revelation swords are immune though. Well, I guess he can work, but he's not going to be as strong as in other fights in the game. Belina, well, is a unit that in theory could work. The thing is that you have to be at low HP all the time, which is a problem, because Grace can't grant you life shields in the fight, because they get nullified by Curse of Nihility. This means you either need to never get hit, or you can't use her at full potential, because you will have to get healed up. Someone who will shine when fighting Asura probably is Delphi. His first skill reduces the enemy's defense by a whooping 20%, which is already extremely helpful, but thanks to his kit in general, Delphi is just extremely good at poisoning the enemy and he can just keep on doing it, in theory. His poisonous cage effect is also safe from Nihility, so he really should be a good unit in this fight. If you want to bring OG Alex, I think you might be able to, as well as Orion. The problem with the bunny boy is, well, he's just not really good. And inflicting blindness usually just works once, so he would be dead weight at some point. A unit to shred overdrive could be Vida, but her 4-strike damage buff doesn't work with Nihility, so she does lose out on 4-strike damage a bit. If you are a big fan of Vice, well, his buffs are safe and he's a good unit to use. Might cause overcapping on poison though, which could be a problem in a longer fight. The next weapon class we are going to talk about are axes. The first one we can talk about is Dragalia Victor. His base kit should be viable enough for him to be a possible unit. The problems lie within his buff zone stuff. He can blaze a buff zone which increases crit rate, but that would be just a nice bonus anyway and gets nullified by Curse of Nihility. His second skill does get stronger when you are in a buff zone, and his core ability also only activates in buff zones. The problem, like I said, not a lot of people will bring buff zones, so these kind of things shouldn't be really considered. But he does dispel and his mods aren't too bad without these things, so I guess this is a if you really want situation. Because in theory, the additional hits from the buff zones he's standing in should still work. Summer is here, and well, so is Summer Pathia. She reduces the enemy's defense and she can inflict poison quite a lot. Her force strikes are powerful and fun to use. I think she might be a pretty good option in this fight. If you need the spell, she can't do that, but that's why shared skills are a thing. Her force strike buff does not get nullified, by the way. So Curran works. I mean, Curran is a heavy-hitting poison punisher unit, and I am going to assume that Asura can be poisoned. So Curran will be able to deal some nice damage. And he also reduces defense, which is always really good. With Sasanka, it really depends. She can inflict bleed, which is nice, and she has a stronger force strike, which could inflict sleep, but only if you can actually do that with Asura. The strength buff she gets from her second skill gets nullified, and well, once you've slapped the enemy, she only may be good to reduce the overdrive bar more quickly. This is another case of maybe, but probably not. Another maybe option is Eric, who has a dispel on his force strike and can deal some nice damage, but that's about it. In the lance weapon type, we have two dragon-focused units, and I think both might be really good. I'm excited to think about the fact that Lafna might be extremely good in this fight. This also might be because I have built her ages ago, but I could never use her, and I really want to wreck some stuff with her. She cannot inflict poison by herself, but if you have like a Delphi on the team, it should really be no problem to have Asura be poisoned, and once that's the case, Lafna hits like a truck. A cute truck. You can probably isekai Asura with Lafna, if Asura can be poisoned. Fortis' strength buff she gets from her second skill gets erased, and her chain core abilities Dragon Claws gets killed too, but aside from that, she can transform into dragons quite often if played right, and it is always fun and a good thing to do. She also is really strong against poisoned enemies thanks to her sword ability, so I guess Forte can be used. Well, with OG Pathia, she goes into the trash, bye bye. One of my favorite weapon classes are bows, and well, bows have it a bit tough. Oprah Karina brings a buff zone, which, well, you know the drill. She can inflict Shadow Blade at least and does some nice damage with her first skill, but that's sadly about it. Normal Chell is very reliant on buffs, so nope. Valentine's Addis could work, but his whole kit is built around being at low HP, so this is going to be difficult with him. He can give out one-use shields though, which are not affected by Nihility, but I'm afraid it might not be enough to make him very viable. He is stronger against poisoned enemies though, so I guess you can try it out. The best bow option for Asura might be Nefaria, whose buffs are immune and she can also deal quite a lot of damage to poisoned enemies, while also inflicting poison and blindness. I don't think that blind will be a big thing, I mean maybe. If that's a thing, you could also bring Norwin, since he can deal more damage to poisoned enemies, and if Asura can be afflicted with blind, then he can use it that at least. His team buffs will get nullified though, so I don't know, another big maybe, but probably not. By the way, if you need help with the Dominion boss series or other fights in Dragalia Lost, join our Discord. You can pretty much always get help there if you need someone to play with. The link is in the description, and you can just join us there and hang out. We have quite a lot of 5-star shadow ones, and most of them could be viable. Vania's viability is not a surprise, since she is built around being safe from Nihility, and she can also provide Cygames. She's probably going to be a good support unit for the fight. Original Xena could also be used, but she is sadly not too strong, as she is another support unit. Cassandra's HP buffs to herself are safe from the Curse of Nihility, and she might be good for the fight if you can play her well, because in the end she needs to take damage to inflict a lot of damage. So I kinda hope that she can be used, but as always with units like her, it's going to be super difficult. With Gala Cleo, well, her Force Strike buff field is dead, but aside from that, her skill shift works now and the defense debuff is also pretty good. I do think she is going to be viable in the fight, but not as close as strong as she can be in other fights, simply because her buff field is usually what makes her such a good support. As with Belina, Veronica will be a difficult unit to play because she needs to be at low HP to be really good, and without Grace this is a tough thing to do. Last but not least, Althemia can also be really good if you literally never get hit. Before we talk about healers, let's take a look at Manacasters, or the one Manacaster we currently have, Gala Shell. The problem with her is that her Splendido Dominio does more damage the more buffs she has. She does get a immune buff when using her second skill, but I am not sure if that helps much. In the end, Gala Shell is not really about her skills, but rather about inflicting Shadow Blight and just going wild with her force strikes. And at that, she's still going to be really good, although she can't really reach full potential and her buff field won't have an effect. Interestingly enough, her Chainco ability seems to be immune since it's passive, although her buff field itself doesn't work. So, like I said, healers. Craze? Nope. Her entire kit gets destroyed by Curse of Nihility, rendering her completely useless, making her want to join her husband even more. Thankfully, we have other options for the fight. Samaverica, thanks to her Spiral, can grant Strength Amps while also healing the entire team, giving out one-use shields and granting overdamage. I think she might be the best option for healers in this fight with her Spiral, because she just does so much. My boy Heinwald could be viable thanks to the recently released staff skill Damage Print, but his entire second skill becomes useless, which in turn makes his healing weaker, so probably not the best option to work with. OG Cleo can dispel with her Spiral and gives decent heals, but all of her buffs get killed. Another unit that could be mentioned is Edward, since he can provide one-use shields, but I think his healing might not be enough. Before we talk about dragons, I'm recording this video before we get any news about Summer Mim, Summer Alex, etc. And I think they are going to be shadow units, because the units in the event are going to be light. So I'm pretty sure that they are going to be viable in these fights, because it would be really weird if not. But I'm going to do unit analysis videos on them, so subscribe to the channel to see the videos when they drop. So let's take a look at which dragons you could use in the fight. We do have quite a lot of good dragons in the shadow element. The most obvious one would be Arsene, because he grants 2 90% skill damage buffs while also having a strong dragon skill. Since his skill damage buffs have no requirement, it's completely safe from Nihility, unlike Gala Cadsith. A good support dragon will be Ramiel, because he can reduce defense while inflicting poison, and well, you can shapeshift right at the start of the fight, which means you theoretically could dodge Nihility, but I don't really see the point in that. The probably best dragon for support units is still Azazel, because he increases HP and gives skill haste. Sadly, the poison punisher buffs he gives with his second skill does not work with Nihility. Since this fight might be very reliant on poison, I think Epithemius might, and it's a big might, be viable, but I am afraid his passive buffs are too weak. But if you don't have anything else, well, why not? If you have Fatalis, you could use it too, but keep in mind that you'll get cursed after shapeshifting. The only units you should use it on are units that transform into different dragons, or are Dragon Drive units. Shinobi could also be an option, if you don't have Arsene for example, but his energy buff gets killed by Nihility. If you want to go for strength buffs only and don't want to use Fatalis, Merishitan could be an option, but a very limited one. And well, if you want to be safe but also get a small strength buff, I would even say that Nidhogg could be an option, since he increases HP to make you more tanky while giving you a 35% strength buff. And speaking of Nidhogg, also pretty sure Reborn Nidhogg will be an extremely good shadow dragon that's going to be viable in the Sinister Dominion series, but I don't have any infos on that right now, but like I said, pretty sure it's going to be the case. Now, let's revisit some flame units real quick, because recently Cygames announced that skill shift mechanics will now work with Nihility. This doesn't mean the buffs from that mechanic work, but the shifting itself. This basically helps some flame units regain at least some sort of viability. In the flame element, Marth and Rena are affected by this change. The buffs from Marth's skill shift get killed though, so there's not much difference here. Rena's skill shift does help her do more damage, because on her phase 3, her first skill deals more damage when used on burned enemies. Does this make her viable in a Sinister Dominion fight? Well, once again, it probably works, but not that well. And, well, phew, what a long video. Thank you guys so much for watching it. If you enjoyed it, like I said at the beginning, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments below who you are going to use for the Asura fight. Also check out my social links in the description and join our Discord to talk to fun people. And with that, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!